Coming up on Broncos Country Connected. With the Broncos and Jaguars set to face off at Wembley Stadium this season, I'm checking in with Broncos Europe founder Michael McQuaid to learn more about what this matchup means for the Broncos fan base across the pond. Then the Denver 7 crew discusses what the international series is like from the player perspective and previews the Broncos schedule release this Thursday. Finally, the Broncos Icons series is back. Andrew Mason shares some insight into Aqib Talib's career and his contributions to the no-fly zone and Denver's Super Bowl 50 run. Broncos Country Connected is next. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Broncos Country Connected. This upcoming season, the Denver Broncos will travel nearly 27,400 miles between 32 time zones throughout their 17-game schedule, the second most only behind the Seattle Seahawks. While teams would generally prefer to travel less, that is not the case for the Denver Broncos, who could not be more excited for the 4,685 miles they'll fly to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars at Wembley Stadium in London. Joining me now, all the way from Tyrone, Ireland, one of the founding members of Broncos Europe and the Irish NFL show, Broncos enthusiast Michael McQuaid. Michael, thank you so much for staying up late to join us here this evening.
Thank you, Alexis, for the opportunity, and it's great to chat some Broncos.
Well, of course, we will get to the international news here in just a little bit, but first, so much has happened this offseason, from hiring a new coaching staff to trading for a franchise quarterback, and of course, all the pieces added to bolster this roster to help this team win the West here in 2022. So what has it been like for you watching this offseason unfold from the other side of the world?
This offseason has been insane, and I think everyone, doesn't matter if you're in Ireland or if you're in Colorado or wherever, I think everyone will remember when they find out. You know, I got that text on my phone about Russell Wilson. I'm not going to lie, I had about 10 missed calls and I was off my phone for half an hour and it was like, oh my God, it was incredible. It's just been one of those off seasons where there hasn't really been a negative thing whatsoever. You get bringing in Nathaniel Hackett, George Payton's making steps going into his second year, and just some really, really positive pickups. But obviously the main story is Russell Wilson. It took me 2 months to get my jerseys in the mail, where I'm trying to get the flea. It's not a Drew Lock jersey, I promise you. But no, look, I'm really excited, and it seems like this is finally the year that I guess the talking really is over. And I feel that with the roster we have now, we have to aim to win the West. So, and obviously as well with the whole London thing as well, it's been a very, very positive 2 or 3 months.
From your perspective, how does the addition of Russell Wilson impact your expectations for this team here in 2022?
I think the minimum is to challenge for the West and try and win the West. And if we can't win the West, we need to at least win a playoff game. I think that's the minimum expectation this season. And that's me being prudent and being, realistic. But I think the expectation for this team is to win championships. And you'd like to think that going in with this schedule that's coming out this week, that we can look at it and try and go for it. If you gave me a playoff run now, I would probably, bite your arm off. But I think that's the expectation. But look, he brings leadership, and that's something that we've really needed for a long time on the offense. And, a lot of people over here watch games and it's late at night, and you want to see that energy in games. And I think finally we can probably say the games are going to be a lot more fun. And I can't wait. I can't wait to see what's going to happen this season. And it's going to be great to see this offense go out.
Well, free agency was such an exciting time as the Broncos signed one big name after another. Was there a particular free agent signing that made you say, wow, what a pickup?
I could sit here and talk about Randy Gregory or DJ Jones, but I was really fortunate to talk to Alex Singleton last year when he was at the Eagles. And he sat for maybe 20, 30, 40 minutes with us and was just chatting to us like normal guys. And his energy was fantastic. But look, he was the leading tackler for the Eagles in the last 2 seasons. I couldn't believe it when we picked him up. I think he's really going to rejuvenate this team, and I guess it's like trying to find the missing pieces of a jigsaw, and I feel like we've done that with these guys. But delighted with the Alex news. He's a really, really good guy, and his agent's fantastic as well. So I genuinely think he could be like the Shelby Harris of the team, like the fan favorite within the first season, and I'm hoping we can bookmark that for later on in the playoffs this year.
Well, we are just a little over a week removed from the 2022 NFL Draft. Which of the Broncos' 9 picks do you feel like can make the biggest impact immediately for this team this season?
You have to look at Nick Bonito. It wasn't the most, craziest draft for us, and I guess as we've seen on the social channels with the first pick, the Broncos got the quarterback and Russell Wilson, which I did laugh at, I'm not going to lie. But Nick Bonito, for me, seems like a guy that could honestly come in and he could be Bradley Chubb's long-term replacement as soon as like the end of the first season. He really does bring a lot to the team. I'm interested to see how tight end Greg Dulwich, I can't pronounce his surname, will come in because it brings another asset to that offense. So it's an interesting draft. I really, if you tried to compare it year on year, obviously we went out and got Patrick Surtain in year one. It's probably a bit more low-key this year, but it's bringing more assets to the team, so it's all good for me.
Well, overall, how would you grade George Payton's first 16 months as the Broncos general manager?
It's really interesting because it seems as if he came in from day one and he had this secret master plan that he didn't want to tell anybody about. I think if somebody had sat down on day one and said to you, this is going to happen, Russell Wilson's going to come in, we're going to go out and draft Pat Surtain. Like, I remember almost being not being disappointed, but I remember trying asking for us to go up and get Justin Fields, and now I wouldn't do it in a million years. He seems to have brought a lot more certainty to the team, and now he's brought a lot of these young coaches in, and it's going to take time. I think that's the most important thing, but you can see that expertise and you can see that confidence in the way that he manages his team, and I think the team's definitely in a far better place now with his leadership than it was from day one when he came in. So it's all positive for me, and just hoping now that we can sort of get the results on the field.
George Payton, he called it a great honor for the Denver Broncos to have the opportunity to play at Wembley Stadium in London this October. So can you put it into perspective what this game means for the fan base, the Broncos fan base there in the UK?
There are so many ways I can put it into perspective. I mean, you can go from the mid 50-year-old in the UK that grew up watching the team in the 1980s on late night TV, or getting one highlight package a week, John Elway and The Drive and Steve Atwater as well, that maybe they've never had a chance to fly over to Colorado, and for them that's it's a lifetime for them, and it's going to be incredible for them. But I also think, if you look at the Broncos, they've only played at Wembley Stadium in London. They haven't played at Tottenham. And while Tottenham has got the NFL sort of experience, it's got the field, it's got everything there. It's a fantastic stadium. Wembley has the history. It has everything that's happened. And if you're a sports fan in Europe, especially, that is it's like the mecca of sport, Wembley Stadium. So for the Broncos to play in Wembley Stadium, bigger capacity, you get the chance to have a better chance of getting in and seeing the team. But to see Russell Wilson for a start is going to be fantastic. But I think a lot of it does go down to the price factor. You said it yourself, Alexis, the amount of miles traveled. For a lot of people, it just isn't really realistic. And while they sit and they buy jerseys and they watch the team every week, this means an awful lot to them. And I think for us, I genuinely feel from seeing the interest that we've had over the last couple of weeks that it's very exciting. Usually, I've been at games, I've been at Jacksonville Jaguars games where it's very mixed in terms of crowds. You're obviously going to get all 32 jerseys, but I genuinely feel like the stadium could be orange and blue, and I think that's the main thing. This year is going to be about proving the support in Europe and calling on every fan to get out to this game, because we would like to show the team. I know the team knows already, but we would like to show the team how much support there is there. There's no reason why there couldn't be 20, 25, 30,000 Broncos fans there. And we'd like to leave a legacy where the team would be getting onto the plane in London thinking, we'd love to come back in the next few years.
You kind of hinted at this, but what makes Wembley Stadium such a magical place to play?
It's a really intriguing question. For anyone in the States watching this, there was the old Wembley, which was knocked down at the end of the last millennium. And there was a new Wembley, which took about 8 years to build and cost billions of dollars. Both of them are intriguing, like the old one and the history that it had. England won their only World Cup there. If you're over here, you'll never hear the end of that. But it's just intriguing. It's the history. It's this. I guess it's the way that everything goes around it. Wembley is literally the epitome of sport over here, and to have the opportunity to play, if it's American football or soccer, is an amazing honor. And obviously, they had the European Championships last year after COVID. And they're probably going to have the World Cup again in the future with the Euros as well coming. So it is the one stadium. If you asked anyone to play a stadium in Europe, you'd be looking at Wembley over any other stadium in Europe. So I think it's fantastic that the Broncos continue this tradition. I think, honestly, they should only play at Wembley when they came over here. You had 1987, you had 2010, and now 2022. And I know for a lot of people over here, for all Broncos fans, that they're going to appreciate this moment, and they realize that there are plenty of Broncos fans in Florida that are maybe a little bit disappointed, but we'll make sure, even though it's at 7:30 a.m. Mountain, that we'll make sure it's interesting for the fans overseas as well. It's an absolute pleasure and a privilege to have this team fly over here, and I can't wait to see Russell and this young offense and young defense play in Wembley. It should be a really, really interesting game.
Well, speaking of seeing things, I am looking forward to doing a little sightseeing while I'm in London. So any recommendations of things I must see or where to find the best food?
I would tell anyone that's there to check out the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's got like its own NFL field. It's literally designed for the NFL. It's crazy. But obviously you got Buckingham Palace, Big Ben. Big Ben's currently closed for renovations, I think. The Tower of London, the Shard, Leicester Square. And I'm probably not doing people in London justice. But do you know what? Like the amount of fans in London that live around London, you're going to have to sort of tailgate during the week just when you arrive. Maybe a tour guide as well.
Michael, thank you so much for taking the time. We cannot wait to see you there at the end of October at Wembley Stadium. Thanks.
If anybody wants any help or any advice on London, hit me up on Twitter anytime, and pleasure doing this anytime.
Thanks, Michael. Well, still to come here on Broncos Country Connected, Super Bowl 50 champion Ryan Harris shares some insight into his experience playing in London back in 2010. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Broncos Country Connected. The Broncos London game marks the team's third appearance in the UK and first since 2010 when the Broncos faced the 49ers in their first regular season contest overseas. Former Broncos offensive lineman Ryan Harris played in that game, and he joins Lionel Bienvenu and Troy Rank right now with more on what it's like playing on an international stage and what we can look forward to this week as the Broncos' full schedule is released this Thursday. Lionel?
Thanks, Alexis, and welcome to our Denver 7 segment brought to you by 1-800-GOT-JUNK. All righty, here we go. Another big week in Broncos country, guys. Back to work for OTAs, right? Rookie minicamp coming up. And the official schedule release, this thing is blown up. It's taken on a life of its own. The NFL knows how to hype these things and stay relevant in the offseason, right? We're looking at primetime Thursday, primetime Sunday, and Monday Night Football games for the Broncos this season.
Yeah, at this point, I'm surprised the NFL doesn't just release one game per day until it gets to September. They love this because it gets attention. They're involving all the network partners, but the thing the fans need to know, expect up to 5 primetime games. Russ in Seattle, Russ on Monday night, Russ in the AFC West. Lionel, it's going to be fabulous, and those are going to be games that the country's talking about, not just Broncos country.
Yeah, all eyes on Broncos country again, and Russell Wilson. And Ryan, Russ and the Broncos going to Seattle with Drew Lock, a real possibility as the Seahawks starting quarterback. Wow, this one we'll have to circle on the calendar. And Russ, I think, probably has circled that thing already.
Well, I think for Russ, too, just figuring out that the Seahawks are an opponent for the first time is going to be tough to see on the schedule. But, you know, Russell Wilson's talked about it. This game, everybody's known is going to be somewhere on the schedule. And at that point, you just have to focus on the opportunity to prove somebody else wrong, that they can beat you in a game. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of welcome home. It'll be a big storyline on the broadcast. But for Russell Wilson and his mindset, he's already shown he's focused on winning games. Doesn't matter who or where or when that is.
Yeah, there'll be a lot surrounding that game that he'll have to block out. You talk about blocking out the noise. That'll have to happen in Seattle during that game. Ryan, we know the Broncos are going to London, too, October 30th, to play the Jags, the international schedule. Now, the Broncos wanted to do this, right? They wanted the exposure. And you played in the London game with the Broncos 49ers back in 2010. I think that was the Josh McDaniels Spygate trip. It was a bit of a mess, but still a great experience.
It was a fun time for the players. I mean, half of our guys didn't even have passports. I think we had to get like 22 passports for guys because they never thought about leaving the country. And then you hear things like Piccadilly Square and the London Bridge. You've heard that song, but you actually get to see it. It's an amazing experience to be a football player in America, as they'll teach you, American footballer. And then to go to these huge stadiums. We got to play in Wembley. It was awesome. Terrible game, and unfortunately a terrible game for the coaching staff, but it's a wonderful experience for the players. And I love that the Broncos are going international, winning 3 championships as a franchise. That makes you an international brand. Play it up, build the fans across the sea.
Russ in London.
I love it.
Yeah, it's going to be something else. All right, Troy, speaking of Russ, we heard from Payton Manning last week. He said that Russell Wilson, he believes, will have a smoother transition into joining a new team after a long career elsewhere. Smoother than what Payton had, because he said everything is new for Russ coming into Dove Valley.
Yeah, I mean, there is the benefit when you're inheriting a new coach with Nathaniel Hackett. You can kind of mold the clay with him, whereas Payton joined John Fox and was trying to join a team that was already winning at that point. And let's remember, Payton was coming off serious neck surgery, so he wasn't sure the type of player he was going to be. Russell Wilson is in his prime, and for the first time, Lionel, in his career, he's working with an offensive-minded head coach. That's what everyone wants to see. Let Russ cook. Is he going to be Bobby Flay, or is he going to go up in flames on some weeks? But we all want to see it, and I think that's why with Hackett it's going to natural transition.
And Troy, you also cut up with the gut, the belly. Broncos O-lineman Quinn Meinerz, and you're telling us that the belly it's not the same anymore?
It's trimmed a little bit. It's not the same as it was. He went from 330 to 317. And he told me I needed to get quicker. I needed to get faster in this zone blocking scheme. And remember, they're evaluating everyone in the interior line between Reisner, Glasgow, Cushenberry, Meinerz, all of them. They haven't said who's going to start yet. We can guess, but that's why Meinerz said, I had to get quicker. He looks better. There's still a little pooch there. There's still a little pooch. He hasn't lost everything.
Yeah, that was more than 14 pounds, that's for sure. He could have gotten a haircut and lost 14 pounds, too. Ryan, as a former O-lineman, what is that balance between size and the ability to move and quickness? Did you ever have to gain weight or lose weight? And is that tough for a guy in the trenches?
Well, I did have to gain weight often. And I'll tell you, it is really fun, Lionel and Troy, when someone says, hey, you got to gain a bunch of weight. All right, here we go. Right? You can find your favorite restaurant. But one of the things, too, is you really need a good offensive line coach. It doesn't matter. I was 335 at one point, and I was not a good football player at that weight. I was better at 305 to 315. So for Quinn Meinerz and for all the linemen, it just depends. Where do you perform the best? Doesn't matter what you look like in a mirror. Doesn't matter what weight you are on a piece of paper. How do you play? And for Quinn Meinerz, he's played well his rookie season. Let's see if he can add to that production coming up this year.
Well, Ryan, let's talk off the field now. You were at the Denver Broncos Boys and Girls Club last week with Emmanuel Sanders as he paid tribute to Demaryius Thomas. What a wonderful gesture out there and a great turnout by current Broncos in support.
Yeah, you had Cortland Sutton out there. You also had Justin Simmons, Garrett Bowles. So really cool to see the teammates that DT played with over the eras, so to speak. And really a nod to what Demaryius Thomas did in our community here at that Boys and Girls Club. They're going to wear a Demaryius Thomas patch on their jerseys this year. Emmanuel Sanders retired the 88 jersey there. And you really just felt like Demaryius Thomas' spirit was there, smiling on as we coached up all the different kids running around from different stations. It was a blast and a real honor to be a part of that group.
All right, guys, great insight, information, as always. That's it from Denver 7. Alexis, let's go back to you.
Coming up on the other side of the break, the latest installment of Broncos Icons. This time, we're looking back on the unforgettable career of five-time Pro Bowler Aqib Talib.
Broncos Country Connected is presented by Carpet Mill Outlets. Bigger discounts, better selections.
Thanks for sticking with us for this final segment of Broncos Country Connected, presented by Ford. When the Denver Broncos lost to the Seattle Seahawks in Super Bowl 48, then General Manager John Elway knew he needed to make some drastic changes on the defensive side of the ball. Denver's 2014 free agent class changed the course of Broncos history, thanks to the signings of TJ Ward, DeMarcus Ware, and of course, cornerback Aqib Talib. For more on the integral role Talib played in making the no-fly zone one of the best secondaries in NFL history, here's Andrew Mason.
Aqib Talib was a great addition to the Broncos in 2014 because not only did he bring great coverage ability, but also that attitude, that presence. The word that you heard often was dog. Like, he brought that dog to the Broncos D. You knew that if you put Talib on somebody in much the same way as Champ Bailey back in the day, that you weren't going to see much in terms of production from him. And then if the ball was thrown his direction, he was going to be able to make a play on the ball. And the thing you think about Aqib Talib on the field is pick sixes. But you also think about the attitude and what we saw in the secondary, what the no-fly zone became in terms of their aura. A lot of it stemmed from the confidence, the swagger. You might say cockiness, but he backed it up. If you back it up, it ain't cockiness. It's actually just confidence. And all that Aqib Talib brought to the table. He set the tone for the attitude of what the Broncos' great defenses of the mid-2010s became.
Smith sets and throws. The ball will be intercepted by Aqib Talib. Talib will get up and he will score. And the Broncos defense with their first touchdown of the season.
Aqib Talib in 2015 played at nothing short of a Hall of Fame level. And the attitude that he brought was important in the no-fly zone. I often equate the no-fly zone to the Beatles and how the Beatles had 4 different personalities, John, Paul, George, and Ringo, and you could equate those personalities to the no-fly zone. Aqib Talib, you could say, was very much the leader of the group, right? Set the tone attitude-wise on the field, helped set the tone off of it. Those defensive backs would often be among the first in the building for very early meetings, so the diligence was there. And then just the fact that he was locking down people, and then when he got the ball, made plays. It started with that game in Baltimore in week 1. Broncos offense is struggling, not going much of anywhere against that Ravens defense, and really kick-started that game and the season with the pick 6 that he had off of Joe Flacco.
Flacco from the gun, pressure, throws on the run. Talib's got the interception. Talib is loose, 40, 35, here we go. Talib, 25, 20, cuts up inside, 15, 10, 5, to the house!
The fact that he would make a play when the offense was struggling, the defense stepped up and did it. Aqib would step up and do it. That's what they say is complementary football, right? Great individual player, but also had a great sense of when he really needed to take his game to another level. Whether Aqib Talib makes the Hall of Fame or not is going to be an interesting discussion because, of course, he's got the record number of pick 6s. So there is a statistic there. He's got the handful of Pro Bowl appearances. He, of course, had 4 Pro Bowl appearances as a Bronco alone in his 4 seasons here. One thing that I think is going to help Aqib Talib is being part of an iconic Super Bowl winning defense. And being part of a defense that people remember helps you get there. People remember the no-fly zone. I think we'll see Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware easily make the Hall of Fame off of that defense. But I think that no-fly zone, when all is said and done, could see both Aqib Talib and Chris Harris Jr. make the Hall of Fame. Aqib Talib is a Broncos icon because he was a lockdown cornerback when the Broncos really needed it. They bring him in 2014, part of a big free agent class after getting shredded by the Seahawks, and he did what the Broncos need him to do. He shut down one receiver after another. Those great defenses of the mid-2010s, led by the no-fly zone, the attitude that they had, the confidence, the swagger, the guy who brought that more than anybody was number 21 back there at cornerback, Aqib Talib. He set the tone for everybody on that side of the ball. That attitude, that living on the edge, that's what you need at times, but you always knew that he had the back of every guy on that defense, that if they got in trouble, he was going to be the one who stepped in to try to help out. That's part of why Aqib Talib is a Broncos icon.
We will always remember his contributions throughout that 2015 season, but mostly that boisterous personality. Thanks, Mace. That's all the time we have for Broncos Country Connected, but be sure to follow @Broncos TV on Instagram and Twitter for more out of the Broncos Media Center. For everyone here with the Denver Broncos and Denver 7, thank you for watching.
Broncos Country Connected is brought to you by Ford Trucks. Built better, built stronger, built Ford tough.